There are two types of people in this world. People who love the Audi RS6 and people who are clearly insane. It's a brilliant car, although I will understand if there are people out there who maybe can't get on board with it because it's an estate. But to you people, I would say Audi has just the thing.
This is the RS7 Sportback, a fire-snorting super Audi that has the heart of an RS6 estate, but the body of a 5-door hatch and the looks of a coupe. It's designed to go head-to-head with a Porsche Panamera Turbo, Mercedes E63, and promises smooth, rapid performance at any time, anywhere.
And I do mean anywhere. Look around you. We're in the Atlas Mountains right now, Morocco, 7,500 feet above sea level, dry, dusty, hot as you like. And the RS7 just pulls like a train. Power comes from a 4-litre twin turbocharged V8 that knocks out 600 metric horsepower and 800 newton meters of torque. And because it's an Audi, it's got quattro, so all of that power is being sent to all 4 corners, and the traction is just relentless.
Their body styles might be different, but you can tell it's got the same motor, the same soul, and makes the same noise as the RS6. It's not the most sonorous engine note, and it's definitely not the loudest, but it is gruff, and the turbos whooshing and whistling add a nice dimension.
In-gear acceleration is just tremendous, it really is. Peak torque comes in between 2,000 and 4,500 RPM, and there's no need to ring it out, even though I am ringing it out. It just encourages you to drive a bit like a thug, really. But you don't need to. You can let the turbos do the work, and when it's in the power band, there's no delay in the acceleration. It just comes on strong every single time you get anywhere near the accelerator.
Audi say it will do up to 190 miles an hour with the limiter removed and will accelerate from a standstill to 62 in 3.6 seconds. Serious numbers for a serious machine. But does it deliver those numbers in the real world and in a place where heat and altitude might just be against it?
Right, put your money where your mouth is time. The road is closed, no one else around. Launch control activated, timing screens engaged. That's 100. That says 0 to 62 in 4.9. See, that's a lot slower than Audi claim. I'm gonna blame the fact that we are at altitude and it's a hot day, and I don't know what kind of fuel Audi put in this. Did they put in the good stuff? Is it available in Morocco?
So it's fast, and we'll give it the benefit of the doubt on that performance. But is it fast enough to justify a purchase in a world that's teeming with some very strong competition, specializing in speed and style?
One of the problems with the RS7 is that its rivals exist. You know, and there's plenty of good reason to buy this car's rivals. You buy a Mercedes E63S because you want a German muscle car. You buy a Porsche Panamera because you want to look like a boss. You buy an RS7 because, I don't know, you forgot that the RS6 exists.
And that's this car's biggest problem. There's nothing wrong with it other than the fact that it lives in the shadow of one of the most iconic cars to ever exist. And because of that, it might be a reasonably difficult sell.
Having said that, I don't think there's a person out there with a pulse and working eyeballs that would deny that this is a gorgeous looking car. I love the evolution over the previous generation model. Same ingredients, but just a different flavor. Highlights for me include these headlights, which are much more skinny and more sinister than before. Then you've got this big grille, much more angular in its design, and the power bulge on the bonnet, hinting at the fact that it can barely contain the 600 horses underneath. Around the side, you've got new skirts, new wheel designs. Car comes with 21s as standard, but these are 22s. The kind of size that you might get on a massive SUV, but somehow they don't look out of place on this. Then the rear half of the car, this is what really separates the RS7 from the RS6. It's got a swooping roofline, and they've given it the wide body treatment. Not quite as wide as, say, a Liberty Walk car, but they've stretched it by 20 millimeters on either side. Much more aggressive, much more muscular than before. Then around the back, you've got new lights, new bumpers, an LED light strip that runs the full width, and the whole thing just kind of hangs together really nicely. For me, this is better looking than the RS6. Yeah, don't at me.
Sadly, that fancy body style does negatively affect practicality. The boot is a reasonable 535 litres, but it pales in comparison to the RS6's. More importantly perhaps, rear headroom is pretty poor. That sloping roofline and the enormous sunroof really do eat into the headroom. Those up front won't have any such issues. Driver and front passenger have all the room in the world and will enjoy a good-looking, feature-filled cabin. Although, don't expect all this car's best features to come for free. The basic car costs £94,000, power door close adds £675, head-up display £1,400, ceramic brakes £9,700, sports exhaust £1,450, sports suspension £1,300, and 22-inch rims £2,200. But that's the price you pay if you want the very finest. That's the price you pay if you want a car that makes you feel special, whether you're standing still or going flat out.
To me, the RS7 has always lived in the shadow of its rivals, and especially in the shadow of its own cousin. I mean, it's always been fast, don't get me wrong, but it's one thing to be fast, it's a whole different thing to be fast and desirable. But with these new changes, the RS7 is a completely different animal. Cinderella is all dressed up, she's going to the ball, and she can throw some shapes. It's a real pleasure to drive this car, it really is. It's got a mechanical center diff that can shuffle the power around. So by default, it can send 40% of power to the front and 60 to the rear. But in extreme cases, it can actually shuffle up to 70% of the power to the front to make it predominantly front wheel drive. But in dynamic mode, you can actually send up to 85% of the torque to the rear. So effectively, it becomes a rear wheel drive car. It's never going to be quite as dynamic as, say, a BMW M8 competition or a Mercedes E63, but it is playful. It really is. It feels like it's giving you enough rope to hang yourself, but then at the last minute, the safety net kicks in and Quattro just saves your backside, really.
All-wheel steering plays a big role too. The rear wheels turn up to 5 degrees in the opposite direction to the front wheels to help reduce the turning circle at low speeds, and in the same direction as the fronts to improve stability. Meanwhile, a sports differential helps send torque to the outer wheels when cornering.
As a result of that, the car feels really light, really chuckable, despite the fact that she's a big old girl. It weighs about 2,065 kilos, and that's over 100 kilos more than the old car. But it doesn't really feel it at all. If anything, it feels lighter somehow. And I guess part of that's down to the fact that the steering is actually really light. Even in dynamic mode, it's probably a bit too light, to be honest. But what a machine. These brakes are astonishing as well. 10 piston, ventilated, and they're massive. 14.5 inches on the back, 16.5 inches on the front. That's bigger than some people's wheels. These are the carbon ceramics, and they might be a little bit expensive, but if you can afford it, worth every penny. Strong, not even a hint of fade.
The reason the RS6 has always been so successful, so loved, is because it was the underdog. Estates weren't meant to be as much fun as sports cars. And yet, here's a car that delivers sports car performance in a family estate form factor. It was the ultimate hidden gem.
But here's the thing, in today's world, the RS6 is ordinary now. Everybody knows about it. It's gone mainstream. That doesn't make it any less special, any less capable, but it does make it arguably slightly less cool. And that's where the RS7 comes in. If you can sacrifice a little bit of practicality, okay, a lot of practicality for arguably slightly better looks, then this might be the best fast Audi out there.